Let me. Hi, everyone. Very excited to welcome all of us to this town hall meeting for the Black History Month. I'm very pleased to see amazing speakers who are here already. My name is Kunle Adewale. I'm a visual artist from Nigeria, but currently based in Manchester in the United Kingdom. And today we're going to be having a lot of conversations around bonding and belonging. And we'll be having conversation with change makers, advocates around the use of art for healing, art for health, and those who are also using art as a form of health communication for people with sickle cell disease or disorder. And also we have opportunity to engage in creative activities. And then I'm very excited about, what today has to offer in terms of conversation dialogue. And also there's opportunity for us to be able to ask people who are speaking today, especially on the panel, question about, what they will be sharing today. Without saying much, we'll be going into today's event, and we will be having music, and then from there we'll go to the keynote address very quickly.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. My name is Simidele, and I'll be singing for you today. This is a song that I wrote. It doesn't have a title yet, but I hope you enjoy and I hope you're inspired. And welcome once again to Arts in Medicine. Okay. Hello, welcome to this thing called life. Don't you let it pass you by. Oh, we've been waiting for the day you'd arise.
I'm not oh, sorry.
Don't you let it pass you by. Oh, we've been waiting for the day you'd arise. They say the journey of 1,000 miles begins when you take a stride, so take a leap on this road of possibilities. Be brave, go chase after all your dreams. Be bold now, row against the stream. Now is your time, can you see it? Keep hope alive and believe that you're the one we've been waiting for. Look up at the stars, you will see that the future is bright. Oh, believe that you're the one we've been waiting for. Show us what you've got in store. Hello, welcome to a brand new day. Don't worry, it is not too late. Shake off the dust, don't let the sun go to waste. Oh, be brave, go chase after all your dreams. Be bold against the stream. Now is your time, can you see it? Keep hope alive and believe that you're the one we've been waiting for. Look up at the stars, you will see that your future is bright. Oh, believe that you're the one we've been waiting for. Show us what you've got in store.
You are the one we've been waiting for. Very, very important. You are the one we've been waiting for. The world is waiting for every one of us. So today, if you're joining us from any part of the world, you can just share where you're joining us from. Location, like I said, you could use the chat to just put hi, just mention your name and just say, oh, I'm joining from London, I'm joining from Lagos, I'm joining from Ireland, I'm joining from Tanzania, I'm joining from Ethiopia, I'm joining you, wherever you're joining us from today, just use the chat to just mention so that we know who is here today and to see how diverse this space is today and also how big this room is for everyone to be able to join us from different parts of the world. So you could just tell us where you're joining us from. Let me look at the chat and to just read out. Yeah, Nketi said, similarly, and that beautiful song. Absolutely. We love to just hear it over and over. Yeah, we have Rachel from Cork Island. Amazing. Great. We have June coming from London. Nkechi from Lancaster. That's amazing. Yes, just tell us where you're joining us from. Very important. Uh, yeah, joining us from Manchester. Melissa from Dublin, Ireland. Kunle from Manchester. That's great. Just tell us where you're joining us from today as we get ready for our keynote address very quickly. So today we have our keynote speaker in the room, Melissa. Melissa, sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. I will struggle with that, so please forgive me. Forgive me if I don't call it, but I know you as Melissa, and I probably will keep it that way. So Melissa is Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Executive Public Engagement at the Irish Museum of Modern Art, Dublin, Ireland. And so Melissa will be speaking to us today on how cultures and representation shape art and health narratives in Black communities. Melissa, over to you, please, very quickly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the invitation, Kunle, and it's great to be here amongst everybody here. And so my name is Melissa Dakengerwa, and as Kunle mentioned, I am the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Executive at the Irish Museum of Modern Art. And so I'm going to quickly jump into just kind of the speech, just because it's 10 minutes and it's already really compact as it is. When I was thinking about like how the culture and representation of Black communities shapes art and health narratives, I had so many thoughts, but I kind of concised it down to like three main points that I'll be speaking about. Two of the main 2 points will be looking at how different art forms can really help kind of bring different health issues, particularly pertaining to Black health, into the mainstream society as well. And then lastly, I'll be talking about the role of the museum and engaging in art and cultural activities and how that reduces feelings of isolation and loneliness and reduces the symptoms of mental health and how we can kind of work. How engaging in art in that way helps that for audience members. So firstly, I wanted like one of the main art forms that I seen this year in particularly, really kind of bring awareness and shine a light um, on on health issues that pertains to Black people is Supercell, that was shown on Netflix, and I think that really showed a powerful awareness of cells, but in a way, tapping into cultural popularity of superheroes genre. And I think Ratman did such a beautiful job in showing the Black British culture and identity, and um, how the battle with Supercell and also other health issues, in particularly as well, and other Black narratives, just the tackling of knife violence and um, the high rise of incarceration, but of Black people, and how that prevents people from getting a job, and how that perpetuates the cycle of poverty, which then leads to not being able to get out of like a life of crime and poverty as well, and how coupling that with some other health issues as well. I just thought the way he kind of brought all those issues and all those nuances together was just a really great way in bringing that narrative into the culture. And then also just again showing how the characters deal with these issues and operating in a society as well where the odds are stacked against them and like are struggling to make ends meet. So that was the first one, and for me, when I was watching that, like I in Ireland in particular, sickle cell is not really spoken much about. So for me, when I seen that and I heard people around me talking about that, I was just like, this is such a like great way in raising that awareness and raising that the disease into people's awareness. And also, again, I'm a big superhero fan as well, so I was really excited about how that story was unfolded. Secondly, I want to talk about our current exhibition here at the Irish Museum of Modern Art, which is called Take a Breath, which is an exhibition that talks about the politics of breathing, who has access to clean air, and those who don't have access to clean air, who gets to decide the access, but also how the distribution of toxins into the environment can lead to health conditions, particularly respiratory problems. So one specific distinct narrative that I'll talk about that's featured in the exhibition is one that was conducted by sorry, just bear with me while I get the proper name. Um, the forensic okay, I'll put it in the chat. I forgot to write down the name. Um but the specific it was an investigation team that looked at the tear gas that was deployed by the police during the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020 after George Floyd's murder, but particularly looking at Portland, which had the highest amount of dangerous and toxic levels of CS brought out into the peaceful protests by citizens. And they were like showcase, so it's a video and a showcase and it tracks the time in like within 3 hours, I believe, of how that exposure of the tear gas that was deployed in those 3 hours immediately just causes that dangerous to life and health conditions, and exposes civilians to high concentrations of such chemical agents. But it kind of, for me, when I was looking at that and when I was watching the video unfold and you could see it tracking by every hour, it kind of brought me to that sense of the health conditions that will be probably developed by the citizens that were there, like leading to respiratory conditions, and how that stemmed from like um a violence against Black people in different ways as well. Like it's not just again in contrast with in Supercell, which was the highlighting of knife violence. This is highlighting of violence around the environment, the toxins that we breathe in as well, and those two show like the bringing these narratives and that culture into the public sphere is like again that using that learning and that engaging with these particular art forms, learning about like the histories that are not being told or are usually hidden as well. Um, so finally, sorry, I'm just keeping time on track on time. So lastly is speaking about how like the role of museum and engaging in art and cultural activities can reduce feelings of isolation, loneliness, and fosters a sense of belonging, which can directly impact like bring about positive mental health and also a sense of identity. And I'd like to use two examples. Um, where we did this in recent months, and actually one of them was today, so I'll touch on that in a minute. So one of the workshop, so actually I should have said that I work in engagement and learning department, so I'm always thinking about ways to engage and bring learnings through art for audiences. So one of the workshop that we did with an artist called Thais Muniz was looking at turban and turban she and the bringing the turban into the Brazilian city of Salvador, which is the second blackest city in the world, I believe, outside of Nigeria. But how she brought that into the world and getting back into the sorry in her community and bringing back that sense of identity and that going back to her roots provided a way of healing and kind of speaking about identity and openness, especially in a city where it is the blackest city in Brazil, but it's also one that's heavily kind of like the racism there is so high and it's kind of been put down. So really it's kind of like going to the forefront and being like being able to speak about it and fostering that sense of belonging within even the larger African diasporic. And then lastly, I want to talk about one of our second artists who's featured in the Take a Breath show. Her name is Khadiji Saye, and her portraits talks about her sense of going back to her roots of like Gambia and how she uses like heritage and spiritual objects as a way to kind of bring back that sense of identity, but also looking at the different identities that she grew up with in different religious states, but also looking at like healing and meditation as a way of kind of dealing with the racism and xenophobia that she experiences growing up in Britain. Um, and also, so the workshop that we had today, it was a great kind of way that we looked at that in like a slow art, and so really paying attention to each individual paintings and kind of asking participants to kind of see what they're seeing and bringing them along with that was just a really powerful tool to use, tool and technique to use in bringing people along and to really connect with the artwork. And I'll finally leave on this note, but one of the participants, it was actually just really great hearing, but she gave that feedback that she's been to many museums all over the world, but this was the first time that she could like just straight away go in and be like, wow, I feel really represented here. I could see myself in the artwork, and I like me and my two facilitators were just like, oh my God, like that's exactly what we want to do. So I just want to leave it there, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for that wonderful keynote address about um, how cultures and representations shape art and health narratives in the Black communities. And I think you've really spoken about, an important topic, which I think we'll be going to next, which has to do with sickle cell. And today we have our next speaker, who is June Okochi. So June Okochi will be speaking to us shortly. June, over to you right now. You can mute yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Kunle. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great. Thank you, Kunle, for inviting me today to talk to the audience. I think it's really a privilege to gather here today to discuss this issue of great significance, especially as we start to really think about how we navigate and shift the narrative surrounding sickle cell disorder um, through the powerful medium of art and advocacy. But I just wanted us to reflect that as we delve into this topic, it's important that we remember that our collective efforts can really start to move a path of understanding, empathy, and ultimately positive change for people living with sickle cell. So Kunle knew a little bit about my work, and that was exhibited in one of the Arts in Global Health Advocacy festivals a couple of years ago. But I just wanted to talk about the power of art and education in health, especially in the context of sickle cell and my lived experience as well. So we know obviously art is it's got a lot of diverse forms and has always been a mirror to society. It really reflects our humanity as people, but also our lived experiences, and sometimes even our victories, our struggles, and our aspirations. And when it comes to health conditions like sickle cell, I think art has a really unique power to start to transcend those barriers, whether it's through linguistic, culture, or emotions. And we've seen through painting, music, theatre, and more art forms that art is really conveying the true experiences of those affected by sickle cell, probably more in this generation than it ever did. And sickle cell has been around for over 100 years, so it's not new. It's it's coming up in terms of its awareness and the global community understanding the impacts on Black people specifically. So I think it's important that we start to convey those true experiences of those affected by sickle cell, especially in the context of race. And in very, I think for me, it's how I resonate deeply with my audiences if I have to advocate, whether it's through health or other forms. So, an example of this recently is obviously the Netflix series, which Melissa talked about. And we can see that Supercell has made such a global impact on especially young people who might not necessarily engage with health awareness programs, for example. But Supercell has attracted the attention of many young people, both in the UK and globally. And whether it's through raising awareness about how sickle cell affects young people or the elderly, but also it's that we've actually seen that in London specifically, it's driven an increase in blood donation from the Black community, which has always been an issue, especially for those who need transfusions. So you can start to see the power of art and the outcomes for those who suffer. Personally, I think for me, the very essence of my being navigating life through acute pain from a lifelong health condition has meant that I am consciously making life choices that really evolve around art and writing. And I think this means that I've had some really good experiences of sort of synchronizing aspects of my life and my suffering to finding pain, meaning in my pain. And finding meaning in my pain means that I'm looking for ways to make sense out of life, but also to share that real importance that this is a really serious condition and the impact of how it might affect people, whether it's their carers or their parents or parts of their lives. But also, I think it's important that we start to vividly capture the daily reality of someone living with this condition. And a lot of people might not know or understand it because it's invisible until you sort of have the experience of being either affected by it directly or indirectly. So I just want us to imagine like the brush strokes of a painting and how that can depict not just the physical pain, but the emotional or psychological toll that a condition can have on one. And such a piece of art can start to speak volumes, often through when we eloquently can't say things that words can't describe, but actually visual imagery can start to paint a picture and maybe foster empathy and understanding for those who might not otherwise connect with the problem. And people might have heard of an Austrian psychiatrist called Viktor Frankl. He had survived the Holocaust in a number of Nazi concentration camps, and he developed a model called logotherapy. I think that model is based on a concept that people's lives are motivationally driven around finding meaning in their lives or their suffering. So when I think about pain and suffering in the context of people who undergo sickle cell and artists like uh, Donald Rodney, for example, who obviously we know is a British artist who drove the BLK movement, but also used his pain and his time in hospital to start to change the narrative, not just around sickle cell, but racial bias in society. So many artists will always aim for an expression that their works can depict a true depth of humanity, social causes, or human suffering. And I think there's an objective for every artist that their recipient can recognize those expressions, connect to their everyday lives, but also it's a way for us to, as artists or people in the art industry, to start to translate and express what these deep emotions mean and how they might force people to think differently and shift their narratives, whether it's bias or social stigmas or shame-based communities. So I think for me, the foundation of my work, which I'm sorry I couldn't share today because I wasn't well prepared, but I can send a link to Kunle to share with the audience, was called Portraits of Pain. And it was, like I said, it was exhibited virtually at the Arts and Health Festival a few years ago. I'm also proud to say that we have been able to get some real attention from the work, and it's been subsequently exhibited at the Imperial College in London, raising awareness for students who study there, but also the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton and also the Barbican Centre. We've also had some exhibitions internationally. So I've been advocating for many years for equity in care in London specifically and the UK, but also internationally for people living with sickle cell. And we know that, like I said, there are racial biases and injustices that impact the lives of those living with sickle cell, whether they're accessing care through emergency or trying to get some social support. But in 2019, I decided to use a form of art that expresses differently because I thought it might be helpful to use visual imagery. And because at every point in our lives, every one of us have experienced a form of pain and suffering. So I knew that this was not going to be an isolated feeling for people living with sickle cell. The difference is that people who live with the condition may experience pain and suffering for the rest of their lives. So I paused my verbal advocacy of speaking in events like this, and I thought I'm going to raise awareness, and I decided to do that by telling stories of people actually living with the condition and those that are impacted by it indirectly. And I used visual imagery. It made me think that other expressive art forms could equally make an impact in advocacy and education. So photography was my art form, and I used it to express the different emotions that come with the condition, whether it's the invisibility of the condition, the pain that people don't see, and what people can't see or touch, they can't connect with. So I think it's important that we recognize we cannot evidence someone's pain on the impact or the impact on their mental health, which is sometimes also suppressed by loneliness and isolation, and ultimately depression. But it's really important to also highlight that with a lifelong condition like sickle cell that impacts a lot of people across the world, especially in Black communities like Nigeria, we underestimate the significant trauma of a person that has lived with pain for the rest of their lives and are probably going to die with it, because we know that it's very much under researched and the treatment options are still not there. So for those who don't know today, sickle cell is a blood disorder that causes the red cells to be shaped like sickles, or what you call a croissant. And rather than them to be naturally shaped in a round form like every other person who is healthy, it's shaped in a very bizarre way, and that then restricts oxygen from circulating within the vessels and the organs sometimes and parts of the body, and therefore that then leads to excruciating pain, and that's what people would hear called a crisis. And the crisis can come with every other thing outside pain, from organ damage to fatigue and strokes and cardiovascular disease, but also sometimes early mortality. So the significance of sickle cell is very dire. And it's become the fastest growing blood genetic condition in the world, in the UK, in the US, sub Saharan Africa, mainland Europe. But yet the awareness is still generally and tragically poor. So as we celebrate Black History Month, we reflect on this condition that impacts the Black community, and also think about where we are now, where we were 20 years ago, and where we want to get to. There's still a lack of research, farmer support, medicine, community support, and policy implementation. And we know it's often regarded as the Black disease in comparison to, I don't know, other global diseases, whether it's MS, cancer, or diabetes. So my vision is to really see more individuals and artists, organizations, communities, and members of the public be educated of the social causes and educate others through art mediums, whether it's creating platforms for art therapy, educational workshops, advocacy, public art programs, films, theatre, music, dance. More importantly, just engaging the community and the people who actually have the lived experience. So in conclusion, as we shift the narratives around sickle cell disorder through art, education, and advocacy, I think we can actually acknowledge that there's a possibility and a world of opportunity for us to start to explore that. But it's absolutely necessary as well. And by harnessing that transformative power of art, we can start to break down barriers and dispel social stigmas around this condition and all the shame-based myths that come with it. And we can start to really foster a deeper understanding of the condition. And maybe one day our efforts will lead to a more compassionate and informed society where individuals with sickle cell can achieve a better life and have better life outcomes and are not judged by what they deal with or what they're defined by, but actually their strength and resilience. So in conclusion, I just want to say thank you for inviting me today. I think together as an art community, we can start to make a difference and really start to change the narrative around not just sickle cell, but Black health generally. Thank you, Kunle.
Thank you so much, June, for that brilliant presentation. I don't know what to say. I'm really moved, and this is a space where I also work, and I'm sure you know about that. But I don't want to say much. I would probably love Nkechi to speak, and maybe we could just entertain one question from the audience, or one or two would be great. Nkechi, would be good to just have you speak very quickly, and then we just will be good to move forward from there.
Hi, everyone. It's been great listening to June and also Melissa. So I'm going to be talking about the same topic that June has talked about, which is you shifting narratives about sickle cell disorder through art and advocacy. And I'm going to talk about it from a personal perspective. So I believe that art is a tool to visibilize the invisible, right? And for me, what that means is that at a personal level, I have 3 siblings with sickle cell disorder, and if you walk by them today, you would possibly not notice that they have sickle cell, except, of course, you're in the sickle cell space or you're a medical professional who is interested in sickle cell disorder. But for us, this disorder has changed our lives. It has changed affected our relationships, and also particularly even how we talk to one another. In the sense that when people come into the home and we crack a joke in the house, people are like, oh, you guys are so morbid, because morbidity has become almost part, like very constant, right? Especially when you have a community of people with sickle cell and you see people going through challenges. It's almost like you start to wonder when something would happen to you, right? So at about 13, we were in a hospital when we lost a classmate of my brother's to sickle cell. And my brother cried so much and he kept asking if he would die, if he would be next. And he was about 11 at the time. And we all cried together. And then I went on to say, I promise you, you're not going to die. God is going to keep you and all of that. Now, God has kept him. He's still alive today. He's in his 30s, but he has faced a lot of challenges, particularly with his health. And when he talks to you about the pain crisis he goes through, he'll tell you it depends on where the pain crisis is. But if it's his hand or his leg, he will tell you, oh, it's almost like someone is hitting me and only takes a few minutes break and then they continue. And for him, it's like, you might as well just take the leg if you're going to kill me. Like, what is this, right? So, and the weird part is that because he is a guy, so he's a man, right? And because a lot of men are shamed into silence, my brother would not talk to his school about it. He didn't want them to know. He didn't want his friends to know he had sickle cell. He didn't want anyone to know, right? So he would rather suffer in silence because, after all, big boys don't cry, or men shouldn't cry, right? Now, and to a large extent, even his doctors would overlook his pain and would not give him the right medication or the most suitable medication simply because he would rather bear the pain in silence, right? Now, and at some point, when he was actually in pain, I couldn't tell if it was real or not. And so I used to second guess him because, after all, he's not speaking anyways, right? But then when I was about 16, I came across a painting by Hetz. And in looking at that painting, it was so evident the pain that people with sickle cell go through. And I was like, oh my God, like, he is dying in silence in a way that he shouldn't, right? He should be more vocal. But that was for me to think and not for him to do, because again, men see things differently, right? So, and shortly afterwards, there was a spoken word. Now, this is showing that art comes in different forms. Like, it can be painting, spoken word, it can be music, like Adekunle Gold has done. Different people have their own different forms of expression, right? But then listening to Jasmine's poem, her spoken word poetry, so if you Google spoken word Jasmine, Brave New Voices, sickle cell, you'll most likely find it. And when I listened to it, it got to a point where I almost memorized it word for word. And there was a point where she said that sickle cell is a hindrance and she wishes that she didn't have to be born instead of being born with this curse, right? And for me, it was so deep and so profound. And then there was another point where she mentioned that she wants to move in the right direction, but when she looks at her reflection, it's almost like she's moving opposite, right? Because there's the ugliness on the inside. And it kind of tells you how her words gave meaning to the thoughts and feelings of my siblings in a way that I did not understand or could not verbalize, right? And that was why I listened to it over and over again. And it made me realize that it's one thing to have the physical pain. It's another thing to have the mental health challenges that are associated with having constant pain or fearing like death is coming soon, right? And other artists have been able to showcase their work in a way that it not just brings that consciousness to me, but it brings it to the right people, right? And when I say the right people, it brings it to society. So if you hear a piece of art or you see a piece of art, you're able to say, okay, this is what people with sickle cell go through, particularly when you engage with that art. And then you're better able to respond. And you'd see that now art is everywhere. So it's online online, it's offline, it's in different spaces, right? And then more people are able to talk about sickle cell in a way that diminishes the stigma, but also in a way that it rubs it into their consciousness that they can take action, right? So you can donate blood, you can raise awareness in your schools, you can do different things. But one thing I feel like we need to do more is to bring it into the consciousness of the policymakers, people who are making decisions on a day-to-day basis, right? And it's only then that we can then see this art make the transformative change. Because like I said, even till date, my brother is still very silent about his pain, and doctors would overlook certain things. Like, he was in America recently and he was very silent, and I kept saying, no, can I speak with the doctor? Can I speak with the doctor? He's like, well, you're not here. I'm like, I don't care, I want to talk to the doctor, right? And then that way you then see that the doctors were seeing things differently. I'm like, no, don't look at it that way. He's pretending, really. It's worse than he says. Because I would ask him on a scale of 1 to 10, what is it? And he would say 9. But he's telling the doctor, well, it's 4. I'm like, dude, I know when it's 4. This is not a 4. Do you get? I know how you sound when it's a 4. If he doesn't pick my call at all, I know it's a 10, right? So practically, we need to bring art to the forefront where doctors see it, nurses see it, everyone involved in making decisions concerning people with sickle cell are seeing it, right? Even siblings like me, even parents who may not know, right? So basically, that way we then see, like June said, the translation of art advocacy to real change. So that is my presentation. Thank you. And I represent the Sickle Cell Aid Foundation in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Brilliant. We didn't plan this before, but I just want to just encourage a quick, maybe just entertain one question for each of the speakers. I think would be really, really good. So very quickly, before we move to the next segment of this session. So if you have questions for them, please just use the chat and can just read it out. And I think what you're doing is just very incredible. I remembered I didn't even know that I was going to get married because the people I was falling in love with were AS like myself. And I'm very emotional. Like, no way. No, I can't deal with this. So it was really, really struggle for me because I work with the sickle cell community in Nigeria, and I know I've seen young people die that I know that I've worked with they've died. I've seen women become single mothers because of the disease, because their husband will abandon them with the children, will just disappear because it's costly. It's really, really, really costly. So, hearing from June, hearing from Nkechi, I think what you're doing is very powerful. And I'm like June knows that I always say this. The last time we invited you for the National Art and Health Week in Nigeria, I told you, I'm pro sickle cell advocacy, and now we're doing the Black History Month. So I don't just say it, I act it. And I think it's a call to action that to ensure that in everything we do, we bring a dimension of awareness into this. Let me see if we have any question here. So yeah, from Catherine, what needs to change in policy, do you think? That's from Catherine. So either of you could actually answer that, and then probably we will move to the next session very quickly. Policy, quickly. Nkechi, let's start with you, then we'll go to June very quickly.
Okay. In terms of policy, I think it's very context dependent. For instance, June is talking about sickle cell from a UK perspective, I would say. For me, I'm coming from a Nigerian perspective, and I would say a lot has to change in Nigeria, like a lot. We haven't even scratched the surface, right? There's a lot of work being done in Nigeria. There's a lot of advocacy being done, which is fantastic, but there's still a lot of stigma, right? For instance, we do not have a sickle cell law till today. Why is that? Because all the bills that they have drafted promote stigma. How so? Oh, we do not want men and women who are AS and AS to get married. And if they have a child with sickle cell, we would ensure that that child doesn't get access to healthcare, right? Because it's their parents' mistake, right? That just screams discrimination from every angle. Do you get what I mean? And the weird part is that it then, like, there are different intersections to this. There are layers to it. it punishes women as well. So it's like it's the woman who has to check her genotype. It's the woman's family who have to go through certain points to prove that she has the right genotype to marry the man. And I'm like, okay, really, what are we doing here? And every time you review the bill and you give your feedback, they tweak it a bit and you're like, what is going on here? So it's almost like when there's a law or a bill that is promoting discrimination, that is bad. That has to change, right? Again, in Nigeria, the approach to care is very different. And I think I know this because my siblings spent some time here in England, so I can compare both, right? So in England, they had a care plan, right? They were very involved in telling their doctors, okay, I would get on hydroxyurea, da, 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 these are the benefits, these are this, this. So there's that conversation taking place. It's very different in Nigeria. The doctors tell you and you follow. They're not explaining, they're not engaging. It's almost like you are mandated. I'm a doctor, right? I have that power and authority. I see a lot of sickle cell patients. You're part of the number. You do what I say. So you're not seen as a person. There's no tailored care plan to you, right? And that is also problematic. So that's also something that has to change. Someone mentioned, can you give more insights about blood transfusions for the condition? So I think a doctor is best placed to give that information, but I'll just answer that before June comes on. And again, I would say in Nigeria, blood transfusions work differently. And I feel like people with sickle cell in England, I know they face their challenges because I'm in groups where I hear their conversations, especially with regards to race, with regards to the attention they get when they have to get into A&E, or the lack of attention rather. But then in Nigeria, you have to hustle for blood. And when I say hustle, you have to hustle for blood. Otherwise, your patient will die. And I mean it in every sense of the word, right? So my twin sister is actually in hospital now, and she needed blood a few days ago, and my mom called me, so I have to send messages to different people. I have people who have B positive blood, which is what she needed, and I practically have to message all of them again. Please, can you help me meet my sister to donate blood? Do you get? So it's not like the system is working great. And in Nigeria, for some reason, the doctors ask for fresh blood. They would not use stored blood because they would say there are complications with that. So they would rather use stored and fresh blood. So that's what you have to go through. Or sometimes somebody has donated for their relative and you're like, please give me that one, then I will give you this one because I need both positive and your relative can use O positive. So it's a trade-off, right? So you're in that situation where like it's almost like a madhouse. I'm sorry. And it, yeah. So with blood transfusion, I feel it's necessary. Like when my siblings were here, they used to have frequent blood transfusion. So either you're having the blood transfusion or the blood exchange, depending on what your care plan is, every period of time. But in Nigeria is as at when, and that is also challenging for iron overload because they hardly ever test. And you have to push, and be like, okay, my sister's received 5 pints of blood over this period. Can you please check her iron overload? And you have to push to get that, right? So I think blood transfusion is critical. We need it in the space, right? Especially like again, context dependent, depending on your religion, your beliefs, and all whatnot. But I think it's very needed. It would be great if we could have a tablet we could take and we'll just get magical blood, but that's not the case. But it's needed in the space. How it works is also very important to ensure that people can get blood when they need it. And in Nigeria, we have Haima Health that is focused on getting people blood in real time to the best of their abilities. Oh, thank you.
June, very quickly, we're out of time already. Just 1 minute.
Thanks, and great. Thanks, Nkechi. I think Nkechi covered quite a lot of the points, but I think I would agree that policy, influence in policy is very sort of country, state, global dependent, just depending on where you are. In Europe, it might be more sort of developed. In the US, probably more. Asia, don't know. Africa, like Nkechi said, still very much work to do. But from a UK perspective, I think there's been a lot of development and progress in terms of the awareness and raising the sort of status of sickle cell and the impact. And we've forged forward in terms of policy implementation, but also I think the government and the NHS generally is very much behind this, following some really severe. Actually, we lost some young people because of negligence, and the fact that they were not trusted, and it came down to racial injustices and biases. So I think we've moved forward in the UK from where we were 10, 20 years ago. So from my perspective, Catherine, the focus for policy change would predominantly be on research and treatment. We're still very much far behind. The only life-saving treatment for sickle cell, as Nkechi alluded to, is blood transfusions and exchanges. And then we've got a medication that wasn't necessarily made for sickle cell, but is being used for disease management. So I think research and treatment, and actually a cure, would be the sort of focus from a global perspective for sickle cell patients.
Thank you so much, Nkechi. Thank you so much, June, for sharing today. Again, I have no words, but I think what you've shared today here is very, very important for all of us. We'll go quickly into the next segment where we're going to be inviting Rachel from Cork Island on monologue. Rachel, over to you, please.
Hi there.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Right.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much. So just thanks so much for the invite here today. I just wanted to talk about a project that I'm developing in Ireland, and it's called It's Not Just Hair. And basically,
Rachel, so
Yep.
can you make it full? Can you go to like full?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that people get to say. Yeah,
Stop being made to slideshow.
are you sure? Yeah.
Yeah, from the beginning. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Sorry about that. And it's about gathering the lived experiences of Black people and their hair stories. Look about me, I'm based in Cork, Ireland, and like Nkechi and June said, I'm an art. I believe in the power of the arts in putting up a mirror to society, looking at issues through the lens of the arts, and the power it has in bringing understanding and awareness on a number of social issues or subjects. So why would a white woman like me have anything to do with the subject of Black hair? And I suppose I'm shamelessly showing a load of pictures of my three daughters. This is Ria, Cara, and Eva. And I suppose I don't want this presentation to be the confessions of a white mother with three Black daughters, but I suppose I just wanted to share my own journey in kind of wanting to kind of look at the subject of Black hair through the lens of both Black people and white people, and just see what comes up. And I suppose this has been a real journey for me in looking at the subject, because actually I found out the more I look at it and my own experience, the more I have a clue and how ignorant I am. And there's so many layers and layers and layers to this that it's so enjoyable. But like there's so many rich layers to this that I actually realize how little I know. And I suppose as well, like, because Black hair has been such a focal point in our family's life with Ria, Cara, and Eva and their own journeys, I have become to understand about how it's a symbol of identity, of resistance, creative expression, and freedom. However, I actually, as I said, feel that there's so little I do know. And I haven't, even despite being a mother of three Black girls for the last 27 years, I feel it's only now that I'm beginning to understand, because my narrative, and I didn't even know this until I started doing this work, is a very negative narrative of my experience of, it's always been about struggle, how hard it is, hard work their hair is, very much, and again, you know, I'm not obviously proud of this, but I want to be really, really open. When now I've kind of looked back and from talking to my daughters and my friends, etc., that actually, you know, I'd use it. You know, remember my daughter quoted back an expression that I said that I'd have a house bought and paid for if I hadn't had bought all the products I've bought for their hair or the hairdressers. And I was like thinking how ridiculous that comment was. And I didn't just say it once. They told me I said it regularly, and that's what they remember. And I just didn't even think about the impact that would have on their own hair journeys. I didn't even think of any of it. And I suppose it also made me think about, you know, the losses that they had because of my ignorance, because of their lack of contact with their Ghanaian heritage growing up, because of my financial status. Sometimes, you know, like finances had a lot to do with, you know, how well their hair was cared for, etc. Also like moving from London to Manchester and then to Ireland, how that played a role in their own hair journeys. And also I suppose the real drive, what I've learned is how amazing it has been seeing them navigate the world and being influenced by, you know, natural hair movement and different styles, and how they've kind of become so aware and understand and gravitated toward their Black heritage despite being in a very white society and white household, and that drive and how proud they are of that heritage. And I suppose some of these pictures really show, you know, the blood, the sweat and tears that they had in dealing with my lack of knowledge and understanding, and you know, I didn't even realize, as I said, being open to learning and gaining a wealth of knowledge and experience and advice from others. And I suppose I'm just going to share, hopefully be able to share, my friend Daniela, I used to babysit her when I lived in London. And I suppose this research project is really in its infancy, because I ignorantly thought, you know, this would be really good, be able to kind of gather some stories, be able to, you know, see what people's stories are as well as my own. And actually, the more I asked questions, the more I listened, the more I just learned and learned and learned. And I just wanted to share with you a voice note that I got from Daniela after sharing, you know, some of the kind of materials and thoughts I had on this art and the methodologies that I was going to use on the project, and get her feedback from at this early stage. So if we could just share that, if that's okay.
Yeah, we'll share it now, and then we would just transition to the next segment because of time. But let me just quickly do that for you now.
Hiya. So I wanted it to or dealing.
Let's see.
With it, but also the experience of having it in society. So perhaps this is a lot of my personal view, but I kind of just changed the tone of it so that it doesn't do those things. So I wanted it to sound more like we and us as a human race, rather than other Black people and their hair struggles and within this really annoying society. So I've done that, and I wanted to acknowledge that Black hair is not one thing. So I've tried to put words such as diverse and versatile and personal significance into the write-up, because that is the beauty of Black hair. And that will mean that you won't have some parents hesitating whose child may have just had curly hair, but they might not consider that Black hair when they read a write-up that sounds like struggle, you know? I wanted to make sure everyone felt included. And then I've just added questions that do the same thing, that make it positive. What was your first favourite hairstyle? What did you love about your hair? How has your hair empowered your self-expression? When did you fall in love with your hair? Who was your favorite famous hair icon? So feel free to like change the words if you're even going to include any of my contributions, because you really don't have to. Also, I thought it was important, the question, what was your perception of the Irish reception to your hair? May need to be reworded. But I think, again, it's this assumption that black people felt so beaten down and so other within Irish society, and perhaps some ignorance. Whereas actually, for a lot of us, you listen to it and you laugh and you look at someone with thin hair and think, yeah, you can keep that. Like, it's just this idea that somehow we are in a position that we are trying to feel better about ourselves. And often that's the presumption. And it's the wrong assumption. It's the wrong presumption, or whatever the word is. Because many of us as black people are happy with our hair, and we wouldn't change it for a white person's hair. We may try to make our own hair a little easier or style it in different ways, but we don't feel inferior to white hair. So sometimes when you're faced with ignorance, white ignorance, it doesn't, it's not an experience. We just kind of laugh and think it's really silly and don't understand why anyone would think we would swap our hair for theirs, you know? Like, so yeah. And then with black parents, just trying to, again, make it positive. When did you start to feel at ease? What was the favorite hairstyle? Some mothers, some fathers have really enjoyed black hair or the hair of their children, dealing with curls, seeing how soft it is, how receptive it is, how creative you can be with it. Some people have enjoyed that. It wasn't always negative. Some people have enjoyed, like I remember with you, taking the girls to get their hair cane rowed and learning to cane row and putting beads on it and seeing happiness in the girls as they may suddenly experience what it feels like to have plaits. Like, it's not always negative, even as a parent. So just trying to draw the focus to the positive memories. And then do you hope, the last question, the black hair is represented, because some of us couldn't care less. You know, we don't subscribe to Western beauty norms anyway. We don't really need them to understand us when we have a whole community that already understands us. So instead of hoping that they will understand us, I've changed the question to be, well, do you hope? Do you care? And if you do, how so? It may just be for the case of allowing in work interviews people not to be judged. It may be helping the white societal norms past their ignorance, so they don't judge a black person who goes to an interview with braids or locks or natural hair instead of straightened hair. But other than that, we may not really care what white people think of our hair. So yeah, so that's the main thing, is I just...
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I suppose I'll just end, because obviously a constraint with time, is
Yeah.
just to say that, you know, exploring this area, which an area which I thought was a huge part of my own life, and I thought I would, you know, have something to contribute to it, and I feel I do, but I actually feel that it's minute compared to all the rich array of the knowledge and generosity of people who are currently feeding into this project as we're developing it together and chewing the cud over it and what's really important. And actually, for the first time, realizing how negative my own narrative has been and what I need to do in changing that narrative for my own health and well-being, and the health and well-being of my daughters as well as others in society. So thank you so much for letting me share this project.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rachel. I know the very first time we spoke, I cried that day, and I think I told you the first time we spoke together. I can't just again comprehend what the feelings were, but thank you for sharing powerfully and passionately here today. And I will just read quickly what few people have said in the chat. Alvin said, I appreciate Rachel for sharing your journey. I understand as even Black people had problems with air issues within their community, right? Within our community. Catherine also said, re-echo also what Alvin said. Thank you for sharing your journey, Rachel. Unpacking relationships with our air is so important. Yeah, yeah. But because of time, we just go next into our panel discussion very quickly. And we're going to be inviting 4 people. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry. 3 people, sorry. We'll be sharing very quickly. I will invite Eugene to share first. They will be talking basically on shifting narratives, shaping the future. So, Eugene, over to you, please.
Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you very much, Kunle, for inviting me to this really important meeting. And yeah, hello, everybody. So yeah, my name is Eugene, also known as EA. I'm a painter, performance artist. I make drawings, sculptures, public installations, videos, and all sorts. I also use a bit of text within my work, but that tends to play a more kind of philosophical role within the works that I make. So generally, my work plays around with identity, and it actually challenges that. From the individual perspective, but also as an artist, and also all of us as people. I create what I call, or I try to create what I call the soul identity within my work. What does this mean? It literally kind of, goes down to, who are you? What are your experiences? And how does that affect your work, the way you are, the way you speak, your thinking, and your creativity? I believe our honest and progressive thoughts and ideas are like unique puzzle pieces needed in this world in order for things to move on in a way that is both wholesome but also beneficial to our people and our world. So what I mean by that is that it's like everybody is made with a unique identity, with unique abilities and with unique thoughts and experiences. And if we can hone on into this and to use it and to project it honestly, then we are contributing into the world. And therefore, the problems that we have become potentially easily solved because we are being ourselves. So going back to the idea of the soul identity, it's also really about digging into one's background, our culture, and that irreplaceable identity, and that knowing that we all are, or that we all have. And then from that space to kind of project and share that out and to educate different people, or to educate our world, and to enlighten them through the lens of that sort of authenticity. I want to talk briefly about a project which I think links in beautifully with what's been discussed already. Melissa has mentioned certain things, and Nkechiku has also said certain things. Even Rachel brushed up on it a little bit. So whilst I was hearing all of these things, I was just really glad, because I was just thinking, yeah, we're all on the same page here. So my project Reclaim, it's an anti-knife crime project that is slowly touring around the country and different spaces in schools, colleges, and even shopping malls. This project started just purely with me seeing the images and the media reports on stabbings in London and outside of London, and it really disgusted me. But I was also just in utter shock of what I was seeing, all these lives that were just being lost. And as an artist, as has been mentioned already, I had to do something. So I created this project, and as I speak briefly, hopefully you will gain a better understanding of it. So Reclaim is really about reclaiming agency It's about reclaiming the dignity, and the lives of young people. It's about reclaiming the voice of those who are in fear, but it's also a celebration of those who have passed, and about protecting young people's lives and those who are especially alive. It is a non-judgmental platform for expressing fearlessly what really matters to young people concerning their safety and knife crime. I say this because you'd be surprised that a lot of young people, if you were to speak to them, will not necessarily tell you some of the things that they really feel, be it negative or positive, from the perspective of the world. But within this context, young people are let loose to really kind of express and be free with what they have and what they really think. So this project is a multi-sensory project. It uses arrangements, painting, origami, performance, costume, sound. Even the environment has a particular smell. And various symbolic arrangements that speaks and projects the preciousness of life, although it visually appears to resemble a memorial scene if you were far from it and, for example, you were walking towards it. All the elements I've described here are created by young people in collaboration with myself. And wherever it's been shown or created, needless to say, it's been done by young people from all kinds of backgrounds, depending on the community and where, it's been done. One of the most beautiful things about this project is how it brings together the police, school kids, young people from the community, judges, community leaders. The list just goes on and on and on and on, because obviously this is a subject that, everybody cares about. This project is really about shifting narratives and giving a different perspective of this epidemic situation in the UK. It is offering participants the platform and the context to really encourage us to understand them. So it's not about adults. It's not about the media and what they think is happening to the families of those who are involved or those who have passed. It's really about young people. And it's about them speaking truthfully and honestly, bravely as well, which is what I encourage them to do. It involves, within the process, a lot of art therapy, as you can imagine. So from the very moment we start making works for this memorial scene-looking thing, a lot of stuff comes out, opinions of young people. And sometimes what we do is we have a camera where I will pause and I will record some of these, viewpoints, or I'll encourage young people to speak, about what they think. So it really is a platform for telling the truth. This is how I like to see it. Whatever that might be to the participant, or in fact the audience when it's made. Melissa earlier mentioned Supercell on Netflix, which brushes up on knife crime and that type of thing. I loved hearing that. I haven't seen it, but I can't wait to catch this because it sounds really great. So Reclaim and my work looks at the shifting of narratives, as I mentioned, from something that is often discussed behind the scenes, where the truth of one's self and one's intentions may be assumed and guessed at, and it brings it to the forefront, where what some may see as negative, unfamiliar, strange, or the other, when brought out, brings out or gives people the opportunity to educate themselves, or us as creatives to educate the public as to what the themes are and what the truth is from the perspective, again, of the participants. And it helps to change the narrative, which, of course, will hopefully lead to a better tomorrow. Now, when I say a better tomorrow, it goes back, I think it was Melissa that said it, I'm not quite sure, that, of course, I've had interest from Parliament and from, many important groups in society who are listening, watching, and taking in the notes. And hopefully this will lead to, the policymakers and lead to them actually taking in some of the lived experiences, some of the experiences being had through these works and this project, which has been called, one of the most powerful things people have experienced, into these policymakers who will hopefully take into account what we are doing, the effect it's having, and then we can make, hopefully, a proper real change with this. So I know, our time is gone, so I'm just going to conclude. I just absolutely love the combination or the involvement of all of us and what I've been hearing. I lost a family friend to sickle cell. She was only 20 at the beginning of this year. And it really broke my heart because it was so unexpected. So again, listening to Melissa and Nkechukwu, I really felt so strongly what you are saying. And yeah, it's so important and so wonderful. And I'm so glad we are talking about this, through creativity. So yeah, please, let's continue to delve into our origins personally, through our communities, through our knowledge and our experiences. And more, and move this perception into a more inclusive space that would create opportunities, better situations for things to move and to change, for all of us and for young people, within the context of what I'm saying. Thank you very much. I'll leave it here.
Thank you so much, Eugene, for sharing. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Catherine to take over very quickly. Catherine, over to you, please.
Okay, amazing. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully you all can see my slides.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just do it full screen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, nice. I am ready. Okay, amazing. So, good afternoon, everybody. Like yourselves, I've also been enjoying the conversations that have been happening. My name is Catherine Munyarari, but I go by Kathy, and I am the chair of the Young Africa Centre in London. So I'm going to be talking to you all today about some of the activities that we've been doing as the youth, and how we've been leading transformation, how we've been leading change, and also building community also within our areas. I implore you as you listen to this presentation to really ask yourself, what role can you play? What's within your control? And how can you be a catalyst or part of the story? So whenever I do presentations, I do also love to get some engagement going. And I would love just to ask a question, and please put the answer in the chat quickly. In 2050, how much of Africa's population is going to be under the age of 30? So I'll just give us a couple of seconds just to add that in the chat. Let's see if anyone can guess. Just take a wild guess. Okay, I can see we've got a couple of responses. Let's see, what have some people said? Ooh, let's see. 60%. Okay, good. Okay, wow. Okay, I think you guys have got my script. So yeah, it's actually 70%. But when we talk about millions, we are actually talking here 850 million. So 850 million people on the continent in 2050 are going to be under the age of 30. So what that tells us is we have 30 years, so we've got 3 decades to really think about what can we do to really secure that future. So at the Young Africa Centre, that's what we really focus on. How can we build community? How can we bring young people together? But then also, how can we not just reinvent the wheel, but really focus on collaboration to ensure that we're securing the future? And when we're talking about securing the future of the continent, we're also talking about how can we extend the work that's happening locally in the UK diaspora. So just for a little bit of context, if you've never heard of the Africa Centre, the Africa Centre has been around since 1964, and we're actually based in London, in Southwark. So since our inception, we've always been focused around being a home away from home. So in a lot of the 1980s, when a lot of African countries and even the 60s and the 70s were discussing independence and what that looks like, the Africa Centre was really that place where a lot of leaders came to really discuss and think about what kind of future do we want to create. So that's really that central force behind the work that we're doing at the Young Africa Centre. So I'm going to kind of we'll talk you through actually a couple of projects as well as activities that we've been doing to really secure that future. I'm going to hope to try and fit everything in within the remaining time that I have. But either ways, hopefully you leave this conversation being inspired about thinking, what other things can you do? So if I just talk you through some of our philosophies at YAC, one of them is that of Ubuntu. which is I am because we are. So it's really thinking about everything and anything that we do is central to thinking of the collective and thinking about how each and every one of us has a role to play and how can we work together and collaborate to really ensure that success. One of the ways in which we've been doing this at YAC is really helping young creatives to learn how to turn their passions into sustainable careers. So an event that we did last year was actually one that was called Skill Up, Scale Up, where we had a panelist of creatives, not only playwrights, musicians, photographers, who are really making it in the space, but talking about how to actually make a sustainable income from their creative works. And I think today we've heard a lot from various different speakers around the power of arts and the importance of arts. But one of the things that's also important is thinking about that financial literacy, but also how do you actually turn your passion into an income? Other ways that we're doing this is really promoting travel off the African continent. And Africa has 54 amazing, beautiful countries. And it always sometimes amazes me how little even us in the diaspora really know about our continent. So an event that we put on last month was all about putting African travel on the map and collaborating with an organization by the name of Ajala Travel Tours, who actually organize tours to the continent.
About?
Sorry?
Nothing.
Okay. And on the left-hand side of my screen, you see that this is actually, I'll ask you in the chat and I can see afterwards. Where is this particular monument based? So I won't give it away, but essentially, there are so many great ruins across the continent that still exist that so many of us haven't even explored. But actually, being able to travel more around the continent allows us to really understand the beauty that's in Great Africa. This is also important because in a time like today, when we're thinking about changing narratives, we have to understand more and more about how we can celebrate the past kingdoms, celebrate the kings and queens that really built the continent that we have today. And without learning and understanding your past, it's really hard to think about where you fit into the future. I've just got 2 more slides, which I'll quickly cover. And the other principle for us as YAC that we really center around is this idea of Sankofa. Now, if you've never heard of what Sankofa is a Ghanaian principle that's all about the past and the present remaining in the eternal now. And for me, what that means is if we want to achieve our highest ideals, we've really got to think about how can we learn from our ancestors? How can we learn from things that we've always done that, without that understanding of that pre-colonial African history, sometimes people forget that. But if we learn that history and we understand about our past and the greatness that is in Africa, we can also think about what solutions we can create. So to do that, and these are my last 2 slides, we actually did an event yesterday, which was bringing the Congolese young people in a space just to have dialogue, to talk about the situation that's going on in the Congo, but then to also propose ideas. And something that stood out to me from that conversation was someone actually said in the room, building community is not about just doing events one day. It's thinking about how we can continue to be transformative in our actions. How can we put our money where our mouth is? So we were hearing from activists as well as hearing about, even the conversation around when people talk about using social media. How else can you educate yourself on matters that are happening on the continent beyond just sharing something on your social media page? Do you actually know that there's 2 Congos? These were the types of conversations and dialogues we were having. And I think what made this conversation so powerful was the intergenerational lens. We had people in the room, majority of the audience were young, but also we had aunties and uncles who were also talking about their experience of the situation that's happening in the Congo. So it's important to foster dialogue between generations, especially when we talk about situations that are happening on the continent, and even thinking about how conversations cut across 1st gen, 2nd gen, and even 3rd generation of African diasporan communities. The final thing I just want to add here is we did an event last month and one last year that's really focused around raising awareness and talking about African systems as technology and spirituality, and even teaching more around pre-colonial African history. And if you guys haven't seen the latest movie called Dahomey, it really causes us to question the need for cultural restitution when we think about how so many of African artifacts are still very much in European institutions. But again, if we as the youth are not informed of the importance of preserving our cultural heritage and understanding the colonial history, it's very difficult for us to really think about how we can shape and change the narrative if we're not engaging in educating ourselves on what actually happened, why did it happen, and then what role can we play with this. So I'll stop sharing my screen, just to kind of say, like, you've seen a little bit more about some of the things that we've been doing at the Young Africa Center. It's all about dialogue, it's all about conversation, but then it's also thinking about when we are building community, how can we make this more sustainable? How can we engage other leaders into the room, but continue what we're doing to make the continent we want to see in future? Thank you. I'll stop there because I know I've probably gone over a little bit.
Powerful. Thank you so much for sharing, Catherine. I'll go very quickly to Halvin very quickly. And then if you do have questions, please ask in the chat very quickly so that we can really take it. Halvin, over to you, please. You have the floor. Can you unmute yourself, please, because you're muted?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Kunle, for inviting me on this session today. And it's beautiful to kind of just listen to everybody speak and see how their contributions to the experience that we're having in the world today and as individuals. I'm going to really give you a very simple, quick overview of who I am and some of the work I've done and the thoughts that I have on the issues around our condition today. We can go to the first slide. Yeah. Okay. Some of you may not, or some of you may know, I entered Sky Portrait Artist of the Year, and I entered it with the portrait on the right-hand side. And it's a self-portrait. And in many spaces, there are no images of African in those spaces. And for me, when I entered it, I didn't paint a picture to try to get into the space. I entered a picture to pose a question. And the question was whether we can now to broaden the image of Africa into spaces that are international. The portrait on your left was a portrait around my son. He's got Jamaican and Chinese heritage. And to understand his journey, and that portrait, if you saw it in the whole, it gives an overview of his journey as an individual and his cultural inheritance. If we go to the next slide. Fortunately, I'm a multidisciplinary artist, so I work in around different areas of the arts. And so I'm often commissioned to do portraits, murals, installations, etc. And this was a mural that was done in a private institution, Soho House, and you have free hand. And often when we have a free hand to present what we want, we could present our own journey. This was in Brixton, and the journey is of the first people from the Windrush generation who landed in this country, but also had a real contribution to play to the Black UK environment in terms of the culture and in terms of what they actually contributed in terms of how they shaped what the UK is today. And this was a mural created particularly for that space. So when you have a voice, you can present whatever you want in that space when people respect what you do. If we go to the next image. I work with different charities. This particular charity is in Lagos. We go back a couple, Kunle. This particular image here is from a charity called Teo in Lagos. And they are doing that work to work in the hospitals to change those spaces. This is actually the corridor to a psychiatric ward. And are we still there? Good. This is a corridor to a psychiatric ward. And they know the importance of bringing in images or changing those spaces and working with artists, black artists from the diaspora and from in the continent to actually present the right types of images in those spaces. And that's really important work that I think artists, black artists have to do in working internationally and internally in their own communities to bring in images that people in the diaspora and outside of our diaspora and other cultural communities that can connect with. If we go to the next slide. And the work often takes on different aspects. So this was from the Royal Mail Commission, and this was to design a stamp. And because of the age I am and the experiences I had, I'm first generation Windrush. And it means I had a particular insight into the role of how reggae contributed to this space culturally in this country. And they asked me to really address a stamp or commission a stamp that was around really relating to the music of reggae, to how it played a part in dancehall music to this space culturally in the UK. If we go to the next slide. Okay, so I'll go to the image on the right-hand side, which is of an artist, a very famous artist, and I would like to know if anybody knows of this artist. His name is Olawale of Ise. And if anybody knows that artist, please put it in the chat so I can hail you up and big you up. If you don't, most of the time when I put this artist up, nobody knows of him. But he was an artist from the turn of the century's 1930s. I mean, he died around 1930, but he was one of the first traditional black artists who were actually recommended or acknowledged as a master. He worked for many of the chiefs and kings in the Ifa tradition. And it was important that he was known to be commissioned by these kings and queens and chiefs to actually create works for the community around ritual purposes, for around acknowledgement of installment of kings and chiefs, and about different celebration or social ceremonies that took place within the culture. So I thought it's always very important to acknowledge people who outside the main industries will never acknowledge. And it's important that artists, we as artists, acknowledge in our own culture that we acknowledge those people and represent them within the realm of the arts. On the left-hand side is a globe, and it was a commission for what we call World Reimagine. And that was a project that was presented. There were 109 globes created in the UK to highlight the journey of the transatlantic slave trade. Now, this globe that you see here has actually, his journey it took it as far as the States to the Festival of Burning Man. I think it's now going to Ghana, where there is a festival taking place where they're going to now look at the idea of the transatlantic slave trade and how that has impacted us today and how it has impacted in the past. Is that the last of our slides, Kunle? Yeah,
That's the last slide, yes.
Let me give you a quick overview. We now live in a world where history has been projected predominantly from a colonial viewpoint. And I think our job as creatives is to rewrite that history. When I was younger working in the arts, there were no images. Every generation has different roles to play. And in my generation, in the early stages, we had lack of images within our community, and that created the issue around our identity. Identity is, I believe, is the most important thing that we have an issue with. And our identity not only goes with the way you see yourself, but culturally, but also down to your makeup, your DNA makeup. It means if you don't live in a particular way, a certain way, that is for you, that benefits you, your chances of survival or progress is not really good. So rewriting is not just about replacing imagery, it's about replacing an understanding of our cultural inheritance. And that cultural inheritance comes from pre-colonial ideas. It means that the issues that the world faces today, I believe that there are other cultures including African cultures, that have a lot to contribute to how we resolve lots of the problems that we have now. So each speaker has reiterated on the issues that they have within personally and generally, and with their own children, their own families, their own communities. And the way that we resolve that is beginning through understanding. But for each of us, our understanding as individuals is based on our identity. Identity is a really serious issue. And if we don't begin to rewrite those narratives, then we can't really address them. And not only for us as individuals, but generally where the world is at now, in terms of changing the way we live, changing the way how we understand ourselves, and changing the way how we contribute to the world. I think that's really important. I will leave it there. And if there's any other people got any questions later, then I'll be happy to answer. Thank you for the invitation again, Kunali. And thanks for listening, folks.
Thank you so much, Alvin. That was so presidential. Thank you so much for sharing. And I would just quickly add, I would add Catherine to the video, and I will also add Eugene, because I know that Eugene actually has an assignment shortly. I would again love the audience to ask questions, from this very powerful panel that we have here today, shifting narratives, and it's really interesting to see various and diverse intersections in the conversation. As of yesterday, I was in Oxford where we had a Black Leaders Summit, which was really, really powerful. And it's going to get bigger in next year. And I hope to see Alvin, Catherine, and Eugene in that room, where we have elders, people who have lived in this country for about 4 decades, bringing their wealth and wisdom, and for Black people to navigate the space in the United Kingdom, and how we can reclaim our narratives. And I saw many of the things that have been said here, from Alvin to Catherine to Eugene, and to see how think about the diaspora, but how the diaspora is not isolated from what is happening back home in Nigeria or in Ghana or in Kenya or in South Africa. What role do we have to play? Recently there's been a lot of conversation around the white savior, the concept of the white savior, right? So say, we're going back to Africa, we want to help Africa. Africa is very in need, or Africa is in need. And but what role do we have to play as creatives, with the privileges that we have? And it's good to see what Alvin is doing with the art of healing in Lagos, Nigeria, which I think I'm very much aware with Nengi, the work they're doing in the mental health space. And that is very powerful to see that connection between you and those creatives in Lagos, Nigeria, and to see the work that is being done in the Youth African Center in London, to see engage. I was wondering why you really focus on Congo, because probably could have made it more like a broader space for other African voices to be heard. But again, you were very specific, because there is an objective that you really want to really address. But I will probably maybe like a final word from 3 of you, and then we'll just maybe go into the next. But definitely, I'm going to have a chat with 3 of you regarding what is coming up in the next year, which I think is quite big, because I'm seeing it on the table already. And I think this is very timely for us. This conversation is timely. And the conversation continue even outside of this space, because I feel like we need to consolidate our power, our platform, our privileges, and the community that we've created to be able to drive the change we want to see and sustain the momentum that we're building. So we can't build it alone. We can't be it alone. We have to build and build it together to be able to see the change we want to see. But I'll probably go quickly to Catherine to be able to hear your final word, and then just go to the next person.
Yeah, I saw a question that I wanted just to respond to in my final note, which I think Emily asked around, how do you overcome this thinking from funders and political leaders when it comes to pushing pushback for pushing Afrocentric content? I actually think one of the things that we have seen a lot with the Young Africa Center is the support that we get locally. So a lot of, especially in the charity sector, funding is very, very difficult at this precise moment. But the support that we're getting just from local people wanting to see more of the work that we're doing, business people lending their time, people who are historians who've written a lot around some of the topics that we want to engage the youth in, offering their time and their efforts. So I actually would say, like, for me, I've realized more that change starts locally and it starts small. But then we have been disseminating a lot of the work that we're doing using our social media platforms, but also partnering with various different influencers. And then even now, more and more, even thinking about how can we capture the audio of the work that we're doing in the form of a podcast. So we still have a lot more work to do, but I think the beauty of starting community groups and having dialogues and creating a space is that the people in that room then tell someone else who tells someone else who tells someone else and so forth. So it almost becomes a catalyst, just starting from a small thing that you've done locally.
Amazing. Alvin, I'll go to you very quickly then. I'll come to Eugene. Then we'll close this session. We'll go to the next one very quickly. Alvin.
Sorry, what was the question?
So just your final word, I mean, for the audience, and then we just close this session very quickly.
I think it's really important that we re-educate ourselves around our culture. And it's important that we understand the contribution that Africa has to make to the wider world. That is inherently lacking because of how history has been written. And for thousands of years, African culture has maintained a balance on this planet. And I think it has a major role to play in sustaining and contributing to the issues that we have today. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Eugene, over to you very quickly, please.
Thank you. I just want to answer one of the questions, I think, which Rachel has put up. She says, Eugene, Kathy, just wondering what methods you use to disseminate your amazing work projects so that all society hears and benefits from the narrative of your projects and work. So myself, I use a lot of social media, but at the launch of these projects, we have usually invited local newspapers, the BBC, ITV, London Live, those type of channels. But I just want to add something really quickly. As positive as you might think this is in changing the narrative, you will be surprised that a school that I worked in actually resisted the BBC coming in to do a report on, the Reclaim project once the installation was up, just because they didn't want the association with knife crime, although a young person had been stabbed there, I think, 3 years prior to my project. So you'd be surprised some of the resistance that comes up. I hope that helps.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alvin. Thank you so much, Catherine. Thanks so much, Eugene, for this very powerful session. And if you would love to stay connected to these great panelists or this great panel, please maybe if you're okay with sharing your detail for them if they want to reach out, I think you can share in the chat and then people can reach out to you to connect to you, to learn more about your work and then to see what is possible moving ahead. Right now, we're going to move next to the next speaker. Coming, just give me a few seconds and I will be ready. So we'll be inviting Joanne Utsing to share with all of us here today. Yeah, Joanne, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. Just thank you to all the speakers so far. I've learned so much today and feel so inspired by everything you said. But then also it's very rare for me to be in a room of people who look like me and have the same ambitions as me, which is to make change. So I just want to thank you, Kunle, for bringing me into this group. It's been absolutely wonderful. So my name is Joanne Hudson-Lett and I'm the artistic director for a charity called Hear Me Out. We work with, we work in the immigration world, but through music. So we work with refugees and asylum seekers. We go into immigration removal centres, we work in barracks, and we also work in hotels. And those three settings are all very, very different. So we have a team of fantastic musicians who will go into, say, a hotel or an IRC and we work with the participants through music. So whether that is them bringing songs to us that they want to teach us, or whether we just initiate a great big jam. For me, the arts and music have been a constant for me throughout my life, and I never really believed that it would be a career for me. So I feel very grateful to do what I do. So I started working with Hear Me Out in around 2016, 2017, and I would go into somewhere called Yarlswood, which isn't far from where I live, and it's an all-female immigration centre, detention centre. And somebody invited me and said, oh, do you fancy coming in and running a couple of singing kind of like groups in the detention centre? So I was like, okay, fine. Not really actually understanding what a detention centre is. All I knew is that I had to take ID and that I had to have some sort of a check before I'd be cleared to be able to go in. And I remember walking in, and this is where I feel that the way we treat people in such an inhumane way, and for somebody like me who is firstborn from Jamaican parents who came over during the Windrush as youngsters themselves, walking into this IRC and being asked for my ID, having all my personal effects checked, and then also being patted down and no mobile phone allowed, and any equipment I took in all was checked meticulously. And then waiting in a very cold area for somebody to come and collect me. They were called, I called them guards, but we weren't allowed to call them guards. I can't remember. They made us call them officers. That's it. They said they were officers, not guards. But at the end of the day, they had a big jungle of keys, and everywhere you went was locked. So to get through any part of the IRC, you had to go through all these doors with somebody with you with the keys. So I started running these workshops. I ran my first workshop, and the impact that it had on me, on not just the impact of what music can do, but then that realization of women who are detained, some who are fleeing a country and they're fleeing for their lives, some who have got actual physical scars as to what's happened to them in their own countries, so they've come here to seek refuge. And this is how we treat people. But through music, it gave these women a voice, it gave them a power, it gave them some autonomy, it gave them the ability to co-create, it gave them the ability to meet. And this is the thing that absolutely shocked me, is that when I was running some of the workshops, there were women in my workshop who had never met each other, yet they were all in the same building, and they formed friendships. They then started to help each other with their cases. But all the way through this, that one common link was music. And that one link also was about giving people space to create either on their own or with others, giving them those basic tools of how you can write lyrics, how you can compose a really short piece of music, how you can put harmonies onto something. And that taught me that no matter how secure I felt possibly in myself, that are we actually ever truly secure? And that was then, that thought that I had was then reinforced when after working there for a couple of years, but every time the guards would change, so it's never the same person. After working there for a couple of years, I was leaving, and I'd gone to the front gate, and I said, I'm finished, I'm ready to go. And they looked at me and they said, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going home, I've done my session. And they were like, but do you not, you can't just leave? And I was like, oh, hold on a minute, you think that I'm an asylum seeker? I'm not. I said, I've got the right to stay here. And I said, you've got my passport at the front gate. And it is just that, as I think it was Alvin was talking about, changing. People look at you and they assume it's assumptions, and it happens just like that. And that's how your life can change, just through somebody else's assumption and assuming that you are of a particular type or sort. Therefore, you belong in a particular place. Moving on with my career at Hear Me Out, which was just as a freelance artist. And now I'm just feel overjoyed to say that I'm the artistic director. And being able to work with people who feel that people are there and they are against them, and that they are felt that they are not welcome here. And that relays back to the horrific riots that were experienced. And at that particular point, when they burnt the hotel down, we actually had staff who were going into 2 hotels in London to run music and art workshops. So that then also has that thought of what we do is so important in giving people that opportunity to see that there are others who are there to support them, whether it is just, and I'm not going to say just through music, because through that power of music, we then have 2 bands. One's called The Unknowns and the other one's called Original, the Hear Me Out Band. And The Unknowns in April had a great gig at Union Chapel. And The Unknowns are made up of refugees and asylum seekers who we had went into a hotel in London a couple of years ago, ran a series of workshops for refugees and asylum seekers. And then at the end of it, and we were like, okay, that's it, it's done. And they were like, no, this can't be done, because we are family now, we have bonded. So that's how The Unknowns came about. So I just want to I know, Kunle, I said I wasn't going to show anything, but I am just going to show a little bit of that concert, which was at Union Chapel with The Unknowns. And the person that's going to be singing is a gentleman called Kwaku. Kwaku came over to the UK seeking asylum. His case was delayed many times. Through that time, he suffered mental health issues, but his one constant was being part of Hear Me Out and being part of the band. It gives me great joy to say that he now has his status to stay here, and his dream from when he was in Africa was to work as a tailor, and that's what he actually trained in back home. And I'm just so proud to say that he is now a tailor at one of the high-end London stores. But this, I want you to be able to, I think this piece that he's going to sing will absolutely make you understand what music has done for him, and everybody else that's around him that's in the band. They are all The Unknowns, and they are all to asylum seekers or refugees. So I hope you enjoy. So sharing screen. So here, I think it's this one. Hold on, bear with, sorry.
Did you get a share with audio? We can't hear it. No sound. So maybe if you want to stop sharing, you can share with audio so that it can play out through. Yeah, you can stop sharing, then you can share it again.
Sorry, could you not hear that?
No, not at all.
Hold on, bear with, sorry. Sorry. It's coming. Pause. Sorry, I didn't press music, did I? I didn't press the audio, share audio.
Yeah. Do you understand? Do you want
Okay, I'm sorry. It's not gonna do what I want it to do.
you want to send it? Can help you from here. You want to send it in the chat here, and I'm going to probably play it, and then I'll share for you on your behalf if that's okay.
Okay, right, and then I'll just do that now, and then I will to talk while you get it. So when I started as the artistic director, my first job was to get on board and get the gig sorted out and organized. And I have to say that maybe for me, that was one of my proudest, most excited moments in being able to give people who are feeling like the world is against them, they have not a lot, they are missing their friends and their family, and they can see that people are not feel that if you're an asylum seeker, you are scrounger and you are the lowest of the low, and you are questioned as to what your being is, what you are here, what you are doing here every time, sort of like, well, why are you here? And you're just here to take our jobs, and you are here to take our accommodation, and you're blamed. And the thought of having all that blame on you when you already have your own shit to deal with, because that's what it is, and that's how they describe it. And I just want to say that the power that when you enable somebody to stand on a stage and to speak from the heart in a medium that feels safe and secure to them, for me, it's just an absolute joy. So Kunle, I'm not sure, did you get the piece okay?
Yeah, I think the one you sent is too long. It's 43 minutes. I'm not sure if that's...
it's the end. So if you could go to 40 minutes.
Okay then.
Yeah, that's the end. So the song you're going to hear by Kwaku, it's original. It's his own piece which the band worked on together, and all the songs that they sing are original pieces where they
plastic or wood cutting boards, ditch them right.
There we go.
هر دو در یک دنیایی از خاک متفاوت اما یکسانی. رنگ بوس فقط یه لایه سطحیه، ما همه اون از خون ساخته شدیم. ما جنگ نداریم، با هم برابریم، نه سیاه نه سفید، فقط بشریم. برای اینکه دنیا رو بهتر کنیم متحدیم. سیاه و سفیدش هیچ فرقی نداره، همه در رأس جهان مشترکیم. یه قلب، یه روح، یه هدف، یه آرزو، به هم متصلیم. این اتحادمونه که قویه، اتحادمونه که قویه.
Love is no greater giver.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So all I need to say, I think really at the end is that I feel very blessed in that I'm able to give people an understanding and a thought that there are people out there that care, even though that there are others that may feel they don't, and that I can do this through the power of music. Let's change the narrative. Let's change what people think through the arts, and I think we all here have the capacity to do that. So I feel just privileged to be in this space with you all and to share part of my journey. Thank you.
Powerful. Thank you so much, Joan, for sharing that very powerful, inspirational story of that brother. And we are all touched by that powerful music as well. Thank you so much for sharing today. I'm going to ask for like 20 minutes of our time for our creative session. We're supposed to close around this time, but just to close this session, today we have a creative session that will be facilitated by my brother, Dudley. Dudley, over to you, please.